This is going to be a quick tutorial, just kind of talking about the point system, how to create a custom UI. As you can see on my screen, off to the left, kind of near the center, there's a point. So this is my personal points. This is going to constantly update because I've got a script brain that's updating it for me. But let's talk about this real quick, just some fundamentals, some notes that you guys should know about before we get into how to it. Or how to do it. Basically, first thing that I really want you guys to focus on is that max at all times in a game, the amount of enabled nav markers that you can have is 42. Anything above that, 43 or plus, is going to end up breaking and is going to end up causing issues for your players. It's going to cause issues for the current nav markers that you have. The game is going to be forced to choose which ones are more important, and so it's a random mix of chaos. So we want to make sure that we're very careful with the limit of 42, and that counts for any nav marker that is visually being seen by a player, rather if it's docked to their screen, if it's attached to like an object like you see here. So like right now I have 2 enabled nav markers. Right now I have 1 enabled nav marker. So just make sure that at all times that you're keeping score on how many you have in the game, because that will break it. So let's get into spacing, right? How to create the UI, right? So the user interface that we want, the custom user interface. So first off, we need to talk about spacing. So why is that nav marker on the left that's counting my points? Why is it so far over? The reason for this is because I discovered a way to basically split nav markers and when they're attached to a player's screen, to make them invisible, but also to kind of shove things either to the left or to the right of the screen that we want. So when players join, what we want to do is we want to dock. And so another thing, invisible nav markers, like if they cannot visually see it, they're disabled. They don't count towards the limit. So all docked nav markers do not count towards the limit of current nav markers of the 42 count. I hope that that makes sense. So let's say when the player joins, right, we're going to have 5 nav markers that are all going to be docked to docking order number 1. And we're going to dock it to, docking order number 5, we're going to dock it to the player's screen. So this is putting the docking order of 5, and this is shoving all of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s into order number 5, which means anything that's below the number 5, so anything that's 4 or below, is going to be to the left side of all of these nav markers. Anything above 5, so 6 or up, is going to be to the right of these nav markers. And so what we're going to do is for the to make sure that it's invisible, we're going to set the nav marker type, and we're going to put it acquiring, because that's the only one that actually makes it invisible. If we do ally, so the 1 through 5 is going to be ally, and then 5, number 10 is going to be like a different mark, right? And so just to show you guys kind of what that looks like. Oh, I guess it doesn't do that. Never mind. So we'll cut that part out. So basically, you want to make sure that you have a set nav marker type to acquiring, and then we're going to dock it to the player's screen. So what this is doing is essentially creating a list in the middle of my screen of nav markers on the left side and a list of nav markers on the right. Now, because our order number for the points system is 1 is going to be shoved all the way over here. If this is a line of what you can see, right? So this is my HUD. 1 is going to be shoved all the way over here. Anything in between 5 and 10 is going to be put right in the middle. So then we have an equal space, right? And then anything on the right would be 10 and up. So that's how you create a nice little middle ground. And that's how you create, like, if you were wanting information to pop up or anything like that, you'd want to put it here. The reason that this has 5 and the reason that this has 6 is because if I'm grabbing a nav marker and I'm putting it on the farthest left space, there is technically the points is in this list. Like, it's going to be on this side. And so it's going to be all the way to the left. And then any information that we want in the middle, like let's say we want to add a timer, right? If we put a timer right here, we can dock it in between, 5 and 10, so we can give it a docking order of a 6, 7, or 8. It'll be shoved in the middle, and so it'll be in the perfect middle point, because we have 6 on this side, and we have 6 on this side. So just keep in mind, just play with it. It's not something that you're gonna get used to for spacing wise, but definitely let me know if you guys have any issues with anything. I'm always here to help. But moving on from docking spacing or the invisible dock, nav markers, let's go into what works. So this is not a lot of script, because what we want to do is we want to make the nav markers, and we want to make a list of nav markers, right? And so let's say, to give you guys who are visual thinkers as well, just something here. So let's say each of these squares is a nav marker, right? And then let's say each of these cones is a player. What we're doing is we're going to create a list of all the nav markers that we want in the game to be docked. So if your max amount is 6 players, you want there to be 6 nav markers. If you're doing more, like here, right? So the amount of players that we have here is going to be 6. If you're doing more, then you want to have more, right? Because you want the amount of nav markers to equal the amount of max players that you're going to have, so that way everyone can have a point system on their screen. But when a player is assigned in the game a nav marker, we have an issue, because when they're assigned, let's say if we're doing it based on index or player index, when they join the game, they're going to get assigned a nav marker. There's an issue where if they leave the game, they're still assigned that nav marker. So then if someone else joins, they now get moved down the line, and so on. Right? But let's say the max for your game mode is 4. If you have 4 players at the start of the game and someone leaves, they're going to take that nav marker with them, which means that when someone else joins back to fill their space, they're not going to have their nav marker, because it's going to be all the way over here, still assigned to the player that left. In order to get around this, we have to then update it every single time that a player joins or leaves, so that whenever a player does leave, right, that nav marker gets deleted as well. And then when a player joins again, they get a new assigned nav marker. But it's going to go down the list, and it's going to assign all of these to the new player that's in the index number. So just to get back to it, to show you guys what this looks like, this is the script for it. If you were to have, let's say, if you wanted more nav markers, right? Because this is up to 6 players. So if you wanted more, you would just continue on down, and you would just add to this list to make it all 24 players that can be in a game. This is going to handle creating all 24 nav markers, and this is going to make it to where when they join, they don't see any nav marker yet. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a player index so that we can keep up with the number of players. There is a get object index. We don't want that. We want to assign or be able to get that number variable in a different manner. So we have to have a declared number variable called player index, so that we can get it later. And then these are just the generic list that we've created of all the nav marker points. Okay, so I hope that this makes sense. What we're going to do is on gameplay start, we're going to set player navs. And so we're going to enable, all of these, but we're going to disable players from seeing them. So you want to make sure that they're turned on. You want to make sure that they're the order. If you want it all the way to the left side, you're going to have it order number 1, so that it's underneath 5 and 10. If you wanted it in the middle, you would put 8 or something like that, and it'll be in the middle of the screen. And if you want it above 10 or off to the right, you're going to put 11. So to show you guys kind of what that looks like, we have it here off to the right now, because there is numbers 1 through 5, and then 10 in the middle. So being 4, so it shoves anything above 10 off to the right of the screen. And then here we have our debug system. So we are going to, every single time a player joins or exits, we're going to update the nav marker, right? So we're going to update every single one to make sure that every single nav marker, that this list right here is associated with the player that it's supposed to be. So this should always be on player 1, this should always be on player 2, this should always be on player 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we want to constantly update that as it goes. And so when we update it, right, we want to get the player index, and then we want to assign all player navs, and then player index here. I hope that this makes a little bit sense, right? And then when a player is killed or changes team, whatever, if they die, they get killed, they are no longer living, we're going to update their nav marker to detach from that player so that there's nothing attached to them when they die. And then on player spawn, we're going to attach a nav marker to the player because we want it to update the list 1 through 6 with 1 through 6 players. I'll assign them their nav marker based on their order again so that we have no issues. And then and it'll be like instant too, so they're not going to see the change. And then along with that, we want to make sure that they're in the right order. No one's getting skipped or anything like that. And so if we go into here, we can see assign, we see detach, so execute per item. And then when we detach it, we're just going to send it to the depths of the ocean. So we're going to send it to 10,000. So just super high up away, and we're going to make sure no players can see it, unless the ones that we want to be able to see it. So then we have attach, and we attach it here. And so with this, it's kind of interesting because we're going to make it so this script makes it to where if it's attached to an object, it makes it to where no other player can see the object, but technically every single player is going to have a nav marker attached to them. It's just that we filter that out based on the visibility, so no one can see that, right? So all players right here, no one can see the nav marker that's floating above people's heads. So don't worry about that. You do need that though, because it does have to be attached to the players. With this script, we're turning it off so no one can see it. Add more players here other than 6, so you could go all the way to 24 or however many your game supports. If you wanted to do a whole nother nav marker, so like another line of information, so instead of just having 1, you want 2. Okay, what's up everyone? Sorry about that. I was having a lot of desync issues, and so basically like we have right now on the right hand we have points, and then on the left we have just the nav marker. So if we wanted to put data on this, like on the nav marker, I'll teach you guys how to do that, but just to give you an idea of, creating the 2 nav points. So just keep in mind, this counts as 2 nav points out of the 42. If you have, each player is going to count as 2. So just kind of keep that in mind. The number of nav points that you have attached to their screen does count unless they're invisible. So all the spaces in between. What we'll do is I'll show you guys how I came to this. So this is actually pretty easy. So right here is just the normal script that we've already explained. All we need to duplicate is the same stuff. You could even attach this, like you could get rid of this and attach this here to the completion, but just for simple cases, just so that you're aware, these are different nav markers completely with different data information that we're going to tie to them. So this is going to be points. Whereas this one is just going to have like HP or whatever you want to put. Just make sure that you do change the labels, so the identifiers for both of these are going to be changed. And then what we're going to do here, so this is extra. This is 2 nav markers. What we're going to do down here is we're going to duplicate this to show that this is being done. So we're detaching everything when it needs to be detached. And then right here, we're going to duplicate all of this, right? And we're just going to tie the index to the new list, right? And so we duplicate this, we duplicate detaching, and then we duplicate attaching, because we have to make sure that the new nav marker, technically however many nav markers you have, is being attached, detached, and set per player. So we'll leave this alone, but just so that you guys are aware of how to do that. And then let's say that we want to mess with the information that the nav marker actually has on its screen. So if we go in here, we can get all players, so every single player, right, in the game. If they're not dead, right, what we're going to do is we're going to dock it to their screen, sure. but we're going to set the nav marker message. So whatever nav marker that is attached to them based on the points. So we're going to get all the nav markers, the list here, and whichever one's attached to them, right? It doesn't matter which one it is. So if I'm player number 1 in the index list and it's grabbing nav marker number 6 and it's assigning it to me, doesn't matter, right? Because we have the filtering to make sure that like the nav markers are being updated to each player that's in the game. We have that in the other script brain. So all we have to do here is update every single player's nav marker to the points that that player currently has, and that's what you're seeing here. So just sense information. If you wanted, you could change this down. I think 0.50 is honestly pretty good. Obviously, the lower you have it, the harder it is on the engine. But if you were doing other info, right? Like let's say you want to do a like the HP, right, list that we have, and let's say we want to get the player's current health instead of points. So get object health, and let's say that we want to do the current health. So here, so their actual number on the legitimate number on their, yeah, just had a spelling error. That's all it was. So I gotta die real quick because my like I said, my network hasn't been the great when it comes to Halo Infinite. So as you can see right here on the right, I have the points now, and then on the left I have not my points. I forgot to change the message, but my health, right? So my overall health. If I damage myself a little bit, it should go down. So that shows my current health, not my shield, is 30, and then as it goes up, it's going to generate. So that's a really cool, way to adjust that or change that. As I said before, I mean, this is the whole thing with like this is it. This is all the info you need for UIs and updating and stuff like that. But as I said before, right? So this is it's quite important that you have a way to enable and disable nav markers since you're limited to only 42. Because a little bonus here, you'll notice that whenever I walk into the zone, it's turned on. When I walk out, it's turned off. So we are turning this nav marker on and off, which means that it affects 1, so it's enabled, and if it's disabled, it doesn't count towards the limit. You're going to want to do this if it's a bigger map. So if it's something where, let's say you have max out players of 20 players, and each player has 2 nav markers like what we had earlier, that's 40 nav markers, right? So then you only have 2 left that you have to filter through. But let's say you have 5 or 6 different locations where you need to make sure that whenever the player takes over something, that it switches to the next mark, right? And so you have 6 nav markers that you now have to enable and disable constantly. What you can do to kind of help out with this number of 42 limit is you can enable and disable nav markers based on player's distance. And so just as a quick little bonus here, if we go into this, we're just simply taking the script brain, we're getting the area, we're getting all objects in it, we're getting all players. And what we're going to do is if a player enters that object zone, right, we're going to enable the nav marker. If a player then leaves the object zone, every single time a player leaves, rather if they die or not, doesn't matter if they're out of the zone or if they're dead in the zone, we're going to get all shared objects between the objects that are in the zone and the players. We're going to get the list size, right? So if they're a player and they're in the zone, we're going to get this size. And if there is 0 in the zone, then we're just going to turn off the nav marker. And then on gameplay start, we're going to enable the nav marker. We're going to give it whatever. Well, we're not going to enable it, but we're going to give it the info that we want it to have. And so you'll even see here that this nav marker has a distance of 25 units. And if we go back into it, and we basically look at it, the second I enter the zone, I'm 5 units away, right? So I should be like all the way over there, but I'm not. And so this is going to be really useful for people who want to enable and disable nav markers based on distance or even based on radius or whatever. But I hope this was helpful. Like I said, I will prefab this for you guys to save and to use in your own. Yeah, I'm gonna fix it to where it's actually I'll just keep it, but I'll save it to where you guys can use it in your own maps. You can edit it however you like. If this was helpful, please like and subscribe. Let me know if there's any other content that you guys want me to do. Other than that, thank you so much, and I hope that you guys have a great day. Bye.